father of communism, Karl Marx, believed that capitalism is marked by exploitation, that those who control the means of production, the term he used was bourgeois, consistently oppress the labor class, or proletariat, treating them purely as business resources. Marx believed the struggles between the working class and the laboring class would intensify until they eventually led to a revolution by the proletariat. Marx predicted that private property ownership would be replaced by cooperative ownership, and he thought production would eventually be reserved for satisfying society's needs rather than producing goods and services solely based on maximizing corporate profits. According to Marx, government would eventually become unnecessary, that the majority of the people would act together to help and make communism flourish. His version of communism is sometimes called Marxism, or Marxist socialism. Now keep in mind that there are a number of versions of Marxism, reminding us that it's always risky to slap labels on any ideology. Labels serve as containers, while ideologies need plenty of space to evolve. So take any labels, including our labels, with a giant grain of salt. The reason Marxist theories are often referred to as Marxist socialism is because they have more in common with modern-day socialism than with what the world now refers to as communism. That said, there are a number of components of Marx's economic and political theories that aren't present in modern socialist societies, and a few of these components are subject to considerable criticism. Specifically, that they would represent insurmountable obstacles to implementing true Marxism in today's world. One of those criticized components is that Marxism reduces individual incentives. Capitalism is driven, at least to a large degree, by incentives, including a desire to elevate one's position in life compared to others. If working harder and taking greater risks economically and entrepreneurially doesn't result in a greater payoff, why will anyone work any harder than necessary? Why will they do anything more than the bare minimum? Why will they take risks to innovate, risks that often benefit society at large? Another challenge with Marxist theory is the focus on central planning to determine what society ought to produce. It's appealing to talk about using our finite resources to satisfy the needs of the majority, rather than serving the wants of the rich minority. Or even worse, giant corporations spinning out stuff we don't need and spending lots of money serving us ads to convince us that we do need it. However, planning isn't nearly as efficient as free markets and dynamic pricing based on supply and demand. At least it hasn't proven to be as efficient in the past. To the contrary, many historians point to centralized planning as the primary cause of the Great Famine that killed an estimated 7 to 10 million people in the Soviet Ukraine in the early 1930s, and the Great Chinese Famine that killed more than 30 million people between 1958 and 1962. A third questionable tenet of Marxism is the idea that there would eventually be no need for government at all. Friedrich Engels coined the term withering away of the state, although the concept was solidly Marx, who envisioned that government would eventually be unnecessary. He believed that once people realized certain economic and political ideals, they'd govern themselves without the coercive actions of the state. Lenin supported this idea in early Russia, although Joseph Stalin only paid lip service to the idea as an eventuality, while claiming a strong communist-controlled state was critical in the short term. And in Stalin's case, the short term turned out to be his entire 30-year autocratic reign, which was marked by terror, including widespread torture and genocide. Now, it's hard to imagine rule by any people being worse than Stalin's dictatorship. Still, Stalin illustrates an obvious challenge to ever reaching true rule by the people, which is that those who control and have the power rarely yield it, typically choosing to claw and fight to keep every ounce of that control and power. If the populace at large managed to gain control, could they ever work and play well together with any scale to make this a credible future system of governance? We have very few examples in modern society of humans self-governing successfully. America is a type of democracy, although let's not get too carried away with that. It's not truly ruled by the people. Long considered a successful model of joint ownership and collective decision-making on a relatively small scale, even the Israeli kibbutz has seen increased centralization in more recent years. There's no arguing that these elements of Marxism represent challenges. And meanwhile, the world at large looks vastly different today than it did during Marx's day. The pie has grown for everyone. General living standards are way up, and people are far more comfortable than they were 150 years ago. Capitalism, with its strong emphasis on individual rewards, innovation, and growth, deserves much, if not all, the credit for those increases. Incentives work, and self-motivated individuals produce some pretty amazing innovations. However, there is something more than a bit unsettling about the fact that in a world currently dominated by capitalist societies, an overwhelming majority of the world's population is still worried about meeting their basic needs. So we may have more comfortable living conditions generally, although for most people that hasn't translated into greater financial independence and security. And Marx was right that capitalism is a constant class struggle, which is continually won and the limits pushed by those who control the land and other productive assets. The disparity between the haves and the have-nots continues to increase at an alarming pace, to the point where it's tough not to think Marx was onto something when he said that capitalism contains the seeds of its own destruction. Ultimately, we can't say that communism, at least the version envisioned by Karl Marx, failed. The fact is, it's never been implemented on a grand scale. The versions of communism that the world has seen so far have been almost exclusively totalitarian, ruled by aggressive dictators, Lenin, Stalin, Castro, and North Korea's Kim Jong-un among them. That's not Marxism. So could true Marxism thrive in the world today? Earlier we pointed out three major challenges around Marxism: its focus on central planning, the belief that people can self-govern successfully, and the removal of individual incentives. We acknowledge that all three challenges suffer from a lack of evidence that these things are surmountable issues, but we're moving quickly into a different type of world. Compared to slow, bloated central planning structures of the past, technology can enable widespread resource planning based on real-time input of individual consumers. Regarding self-governance, some of the recent developments around decentralized autonomous organizations that self-govern by use of a blockchain suggest a world where widespread participatory governance may be more achievable than ever before. And while it's difficult to envision a world without a police power, it's not tough to imagine a future where control is shifted from large, geographically bound, centralized nation-states to more disparate tribal-type groups. This would significantly, albeit not entirely, reduce the coercive control of state powers that Marx railed against. Regarding individual incentives, there's no reason they need to be entirely removed. And there's a decent argument that in a global and niche-focused world, with an increasing ability for the average individual to generate income by delivering products and services related to the one unique thing in the world they love to do, that people may work and create for the love of what they do. Whereas 150 years ago, it's safe to say that very few people loved laboring at the one factory in town. Most people would agree that no economic and political system will ever be perfect, but that shouldn't stop us from working to make things better, trying, testing, and tweaking our systems. We can all benefit from a more open mind and willingness to experiment with new approaches. We aren't saying that Marxism will work or that capitalism is bad. We're simply saying that the jury is still out.